Okay, so let's go back to the beginning and re-examine the foundation of everything that I believe. In a meta sense, I'm looking at what's in the concept space of things that I'm able to explore and trying to map them into reality and seeing the things that are in reality and map them back into my concept space. And there's this back and forth between the two of them. So that's sort of like a meta cognitive principle, thinking about how I think, thinking about what I am. And so my first underlying principle would be that I believe we exist. And so I'm thinking about not just myself, but all, 7 to 8 billion people that are on the planet, and that we have existed. And so there's implying something about the past. 108 billion or so Homo sapiens have ever existed. And then, we live in a universe that follows rules. Those rules were started in the Big Bang. There's probably an initial simple condition, an underlying computational process, atoms of space that produce the laws of physics that we see, that generate all the way down to the pocket of stability that is the planet Earth, 2 billion years of bacterial life, the process of evolution, us coming into existence. There is strong evidence for this in science, from digging down, seeing how matter works, coming to understand atoms. Mathematics confirms many of these ideas to the extent that any of these ideas are ultimately confirmable. I hold as a postulate that there exists an all-loving God because there's a first cause. Something triggered everything. And the power of God is evident in my life because I think God is time. So do I know that God is time? No, it's a postulate. I accept it as an axiom of my reality. I have to accept the human mind has to embrace axioms and then encounter the logical consequences of those axioms. And once they find a contradiction, then they have to discard that axiom and replace it with something else. Sometimes an axiom just needs a subtle refinement, or sometimes it needs to be wholly thrown away. So that's where I'm at the root. What do I believe about the rest of it? Now let's just give that some thought. Pausing here for a second for a couple of reasons. Just trying to walk by some people. I don't want to talk so annoyingly near them. Okay, here it is. Okay, because I'm going back to it. Okay, so I believe there's an all-loving God. I want to talk about that God. What are the possibilities for that God? Man, I had a great meditation on this today. So God can obviously make universes where, obviously, he's all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, to the extent that that is a consistent logical system. So, is he able to make things where he doesn't know what's going to happen? If you say, no, he always has to know what's going to happen and already knows everything that is going to happen, then you're denying his all-powerfulness. Then you're saying that he can't make something that he doesn't know what's going to occur. And, there's a Jewish rabbi that once said in a very telling way that the only thing God lacks is limits. Okay, but maybe God chooses limits for himself or herself or whatever gender we should use for God. And I think my Christian training is going to be that I'm always going to tend to use he, but I don't mean to. So let's run through the possibilities here. God either made the universe that I clearly exist in, knowing full well everything is going to happen in it, and in some way that I can't discern, I have free will anyway. Even though I have total freedom to make whatever choices I want, he already knows all the choices I'm going to make. And somehow that's logically consistent. Maybe it's because multiple realities branch out, and I could have made a decision to run this way or run that way or say this or say that or do something different. And he sees all the different possibilities, but he actually knows which ones I'm going to choose. Or he's waiting to see the moment you say no, he's going to see which ones I choose, and then he's going to make his judgments and plans accordingly. And it's like, okay, well, then there's something he doesn't know. He doesn't know which path I'm going to choose. So he's not all-knowing. And so you're automatically going to bunch up you're always going to hit the contradiction, the problem, that he either can make a universe where he doesn't know the future, or he can't make a universe where he doesn't know the future. And so in either event, he's either not all-knowing or he's not all-powerful. He's not all something. So something always gives. But I believe it's good for human psychology. This is just an axiom that I have to re-examine at some time. And there's other people who are talking about it in their own way. I believe that religious belief puts a good constraint on human behavior. Whatever your religious belief is, and there, of course, no doubt that religions can be ordered, like this one's better than this one is better than that one. And it can always be like this religion's better for this group, but that religion's better for that group kind of thing, I guess. And we could try to go through that judgment. Because certainly people do and have. And then they even look at evidence, but whatever. I think religion puts a good constraint on people's behavior. So I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, I know that the resurrection of Jesus is false, and I know that all the miracles in the Bible are false because, like, for example, the multiplication of fishes and loaves, I said this before, violate the laws of conservation of matter. And we know how the Krebs cycle works. I mean, I don't really even understand the Krebs cycle very well, but it's an organized flow of electrons that basically produces life, right? Get that from Nick Lane, watching some of his videos and reading most of his book, The Vital Question. And so we know what life is. And when that cycle gets disrupted, then you're dead, you know, and there's no coming back. So resurrections don't occur. And you say, well, why couldn't God in this one instance go in? Well, I mean, yeah, sure. But the evidence is just against it. I mean, it would be revelation, right? And the fact is, do we live in a world, if an all-loving God exists, do we live in a world where multiple groups of people for thousands of years can believe in things that are false? Well, yeah. A Muslim would say it, and a Christian would say it, and a Jew would say it. Absolutely. Because it's like, well, look how long Christians have been believing the lies that they believe. And the Christians will look at the Muslims and say, look how long they've believed the lies that they've believed. And, you know, most of your conservative Jews are going to deny Jesus as a Messiah. They're going to say he was a false prophet or something like that. And it's going to be like, well, look how long that group of people have believed that falsehood from the Christian perspective. So for thousands, we live in a universe and a creation where if there exists an all-loving God, that all-loving God is allowing us to believe in falsehoods for many multiple generations. So maybe the truth is that they're all wrong. That's where I'm coming from. So I'm going to make that postulate. I'm going to say the axioms are essentially the same thing. I'm going to announce the postulate that God has never talked to anyone, never communicated to anyone. Just people think that he has. They've had extraordinary experiences of hallucinations in their mind brought on by multiple possibilities, or extraordinary things that they visualized or saw or thought, you know, something they dreamt about that they thought was real, you know, etc. And so like, God talked to me and this and that. And so I just think they're all false. But butting up against that, it's like, okay, so therefore don't go to church. I mean, how many churches are around here? I mean, there's how many synagogues are around here? How many mosques are around here? There's so many. And it's like, you know, I'll put them all out of business, but they provide a useful function to society. I mean, people need a certain boundary and containment for their behaviors. They want that. They need that because it's good for them. And so it's like, what I'm seeking to do is try to create a boundary and the limitations on, help you to create one that it's in your best interest and the best interest of the world. So I have this religious idea, you know, the idea of renovationist Christianity. I'm sure somebody who wants to can come along and create renovationist Judaism, or, you know, they won't even need to call it that. They probably already have their own title. It's like they're like progressive Judaism or progressive Islam, you know what I'm saying? Which ultimately I find that my religion, the religion and this understanding of God that I'm trying to create, is a progressive, idea. And so I believe there is an all-loving God. I believe that the best balance of all of the complications with the belief in an all-loving God that is also all-powerful and all-knowing, because there's inherited contradictions in that, and inherited contradictions that just come from me looking at the world. I mean, there was genocide. There was vicious and ugly warfare. There was, plagues and starvation. And there's, look at the bubonic plague. I mean, Auschwitz. Look at the Middle Passage. We could go on and on and on about all the horrific things that, and not only that, think about the horrific things that can occur. I love science fiction. And I was thinking, is there anything worse than the extinction of the human race? And it's like, well, yeah, actually. You ever read Dan Simmons' Hyperion? The idea of AI, this AI thing takes over humanity and tortures it for 1 trillion years. It's like, okay, that's probably worse than our extinction, right? So, yeah. So where am I going with this? Let's go back to God. Let's try to look at creation and everything from God's perspective. Okay, can God create a universe where he knows what's going to happen? Sure. Did he do that with this one that we live in? I'm going to make it as a postulate, no. So, did he know human beings were going to come into existence? I'm going to go and say no. Because you go back, human beings only existed for 100,000 years. The universe had already been in existence for 13.7 billion years, right? At that point. And we didn't know how vast and how complicated and how extremely extraordinary complex it is. And we don't even know how far it goes because, there's limitations to how far we can see into the past and how far we can see far away. Because when you look far away, you're looking into the past. Physicists always tell me that, and I'd rather understand it, I suppose. But, so I would argue with you that God triggered the universe into existence. It's acting on its own, following out its laws. God is time itself pushing it into existence. And he's watching what happens. And here comes human beings in this process, this cauldron. And how did we start out? Wearing, mammoth clothes made out of woolly mammoth and killing each other in raids, or, fighting off the saber-toothed tigers, or whatever it is that we were doing at the onset, and he's watching us and making the decision to let this creation continue to go on. At no time, I'm holding this a postulate, I can't prove it, but I don't think you can prove the other one either. At no time did he ever reach into the world and manipulate it. At no time did he ever reach into the world and change it. He's letting it flow and watching what happens. And then you could say, well, he's not all loving. Well, it's our creation. It's becoming more and more our creation as we get more sophisticated with our technology and our oneness with each other. And it's like, so what is love? He wants to see what happens. So that's why. So is there an afterlife? It's only logical to me that God, there will be an afterlife, because that's how, if I hold as a postulate that there is an all-loving God, then yeah, there will be an afterlife. That's like a necessary consequence of that belief. So maybe God isn't all-loving. Maybe there's a deist God, one who triggers the world into existence and doesn't care about it and doesn't act to change it or protect it or anything, and doesn't care how much evil happens in the world. Well, I suppose you could hold that postulate. I'm not going to, because I have so many arguments and so many things I can say that I could defend my axiom that there's an all-loving God there. I can defend it, even though he's not communicating with us or ever talking to us. He's just watching. Because, after I die, I'm supposed, just like you take, a very complex piece of John Conway's Game of Life, almost an infinite plane of things happening on this, and it's iterating forward. And, at any time, he could run it backwards and cut a piece of it out and put it in a different plane. You know what I'm saying? It just seems obvious that he did it. So, got to play John Conway's The Game of Life to understand what the hell I'm talking about there. Like, just Google it and you can play it right away and read about the rules. Cellular automaton, right? So I can believe in an all-loving God. There's nothing in this world that I see is inconsistent with that. I really don't, even though I know death penalties happen. Yeah, I know that all kinds of people have been tortured horribly for long periods of time. But God can make it up to you. And I bet you, if you sit down with anybody and run them through this simulation questioning, simulation, that's the thinking. The weakest form of omniscience is God is the only being that doesn't know he's in a simulation. I just love that idea. Everyone else is, am I in a simulation? Are you an NPC in my simulated world that I've been forced to be in? But I mean, simulation theory offers a great argument. I've made this argument before. I'm being repetitive, but I can't help myself because I'm going back over my foundations, right? Simulation theory would be the idea that you say you die, and then you go to another place, and you're offered a chance to live again. And when you offered that chance to live again, you can either know who you were in your previous life or many previous lives, or you don't get to know. And it's like, we're going to offer you. So like, if you got to know that if you enter into the simulation again, whatever happens to you, whatever friendships you make, you ultimately get to rerun the simulation again, like we do with computer games. It wouldn't be as interesting. The friendships you make wouldn't be as deep. This wonder about who am I? What am I in this world? The Kamala Harris thing, you didn't just fall out of a coconut tree. You didn't just fall out. You exist in the oneness of everything you have been and are, Anyway, I don't remember what it is she said, but it was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, the beginning of things haven't... I can't help but suddenly talk about Trump. What a shift of gears. But it's like, the beginning of things is very important. And that's all we look at stuff, but we got to go back to the beginning of things, because time is a very real dimension. And if you go back to the beginning of things with Trump, with me, you go back to Obama's birth certificate. He's like, he wasn't born in America. Where's his birth certificate? I'm sending my best people to Hawaii to go get his, I'm like, whoa, pal. We all know, that when Barack was 18 years old or whatever and needed to get a driver's license, he had to present his birth certificate. And every time he filled out a form to go to a college, he had to acknowledge that he was a U.S. citizen. It's so self-evidently true that he was born in Hawaii and is a full-blown American citizen that it's ridiculous that you're doing this. It's just ridiculous. But the reason why you're doing it is it's a dog whistle. It's a sound only Ku Klux Klan members here. Only deep white supremacists here. Only people that, don't like some mixed race black man who went to Harvard Law and speaks with such, precision. I wish I could speak like him. God, because I stutter and I'm all over the place, right? But, you don't like that fact. And how many people in the United States of America don't like Barack Obama just simply because he's a black man? Just because he's a smart, well-educated, black man. And it's like, well, there's some. And you're able to dog whistle to them. Say, I'm going to be on your side. I hate Trump for that. I do. Because he knows what he was doing. He knew the reaction it would get. He's trolling the left because the left knew that they would be upset by it. He knew the left would be upset by it because it's like, how can you say stuff like that? And he's dog whistling to the right. I'm going to be on your side. And I hate him for it. He has to apologize for that. And he hasn't. And that's how he comes back into my awareness in 2015. Not long after that, I called him a Nazi on Facebook. Because why? Why did I call him a Nazi on Facebook? Because the 11 million will be gone in an instant. He was talking about the undocumented immigrants at the time. And it's like, 11 million people will be gone in an instant. People have a tendency to do what they say. And all it takes is one serious emergency situation, and suddenly you're going to act on what you're saying. Say a dirty bomb goes off in New York City or something like that, and now we believe we're under attack by terrorists or something. Suddenly 11 million people really will be gone in an instant, and we might commit genocide on them. And it's like, don't even get that logic started. Don't allow for that. And that's the genius of the right now is to be like, you're not securing the border properly. And it's like, we need Mexico. Mexico is a young nation with a lot of people. And we need them to be 100% on our side. We need to be 100% on Mexico's side. And Mexico needs to continue to build up its industry and our trading with each other and trading of labor and our trading of goods and products and services and all that. It's a wonderful, good thing for humanity, you know, and we should have an open border with Mexico. Now, I'm not saying that a person born in Mexico should be allowed to sit on a jury or to vote or anything like that, you know. But they should be able to easily and freely come to America and work and own property, you know, because, you know, by virtue of the right that you're a Mexican citizen. I didn't say Brazil or Chinese or anything else. I said Mexican because we share a border. And that's the obvious correct approach. But instead, you know, knowing full well that you're identifying a problem that can't be solved except for the logic that I just gave, which is just open the border up. You know what I mean? And make the border every police officer in America that just enforces the local laws, and let immigration, you know, laws be enforced by anyone, by any, you know, citizen, essentially. You follow me? So a Mexican citizen comes to America, they can work and they can own property, but they don't have the rights of citizens. That's all. So what? You know, and eventually they can apply for and have American citizenship. A Mexican citizenship should be easier. A Mexican, you know, citizen should be more easily able to become an American citizen than anyone else in the world, except maybe Canadian. You know, it should be equal, something like that. So long as it's reciprocated, and I'm sure it would be. So, I mean, that's the obvious way to deal with that problem. It's so obvious to me. It's unreal. Just the GDP of both of our nations would just skyrocket. And it would just be better for everyone if we just had an open border down there. But, you know, the genius of the right is to not let you see that, is to cloud it with face tattoos. Lots of face tattoos and fentanyl and face tattoos and fentanyl. Goofballs. Anyway, what was I even talking about? So it's kind of, yeah. So I'm going all the way to what's the nature of God. You know, all the way to exactly how to deal with, you know, some current political thing. But that's been my struggle, 53-year-old man, right? That's been my struggle my whole life long, is to try to find some way to understand the root of reality, you know, by the study of philosophy and logic and mathematics and the study of religion too, because, you know, what's good about religion, you know? And so, what would be my basics teachings as a renovationist Christian, you know? I'm doing something different than everybody else. Yeah, I'm not encouraging anyone to follow my path. I'm on my own path. I'm teaching people to do something that I'm not doing. I'm openly admitting to that. That's okay. I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, St. Paul says somewhere something like, you who teach people not to steal, do you steal? I get his point. I'm violating that principle. I'm going against what St. Paul's saying. And that's fine. I really, so long as I'm transparent and clear about it. I'm on a different path. I'm trying to teach others to do something different than what I'm doing. I can't say things that are false anymore, even ritualistically. And I have a very strict definition of truth. Truth is relevant, and truth is logically consistent. Truth is logical. Truth is also relevant to the moment. It's relevant from time to time. And what do I see? I see a fracturing of humanity because of all the conflicting revelations. So I'm being relevant. I'm attacking the fact all this conflicting revelation is explainable by the fact that God has never spoken to anyone. So, you know, I'm trying to, and then I play that axiom out in my mind and observe the logical consequences of that axiom. And that axiom is backed up by reality. I mean, I could announce a different axiom. You know, I could be like, hey, space aliens are watching us right now, you know? And then I'd go look for evidence of that. And there's some, but it's pretty weak. And ultimately, I would conclude that axiom just isn't the one that I should hold. You know, maybe I could come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff. But I mean, there has to be evidence for it. And until there's evidence for it, that you announce an axiom and then you go through the logical consequences of that axiom, and then you see how well it accords with reality, And this is the mapping of concept space into reality, and reality back into concept space. And that job will never be perfectly done. There's theorems about it, like, you know, Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorem. This one guy said something like Kurt Gödel's incompleteness theorem could easily be translated in basic philosophy, something like this. Like, you know, it hasn't been proven yet, but I'm sure there's philosophers working on it. It's like any language system which tries to articulate things that are in concept space into the world, whenever they're always is going to have outrageously true things that can't be proven in their statements. And I was just listening to Sean Carroll talk to this really cool mathematician. I have a degree in mathematics, just a bachelor's degree, but I worked on Kurt Gödel's theorem when I was doing my bachelor's degree in math. And so I rather understand most of the things that he was saying. And it was like, what's the density of true but unprovable statements in some second order logical system that tries to make all the statements that are possible? And the guy really couldn't answer the question. He was like, it's somewhere between 0 and 1, you know, the density being 1, being like every statement's true but unprovable, all the way down to there's very, very few sentences that are true but unprovable. What would be the things I could say aloud that are probably true but unprovable? God can make universes where he knows everything that's going to happen. True but unprovable. You know what I mean? Anything that I start with, almost with God, it's like probably true but unprovable, right? So, yeah. So we got to put a bound on it. At some point, we have to start somewhere. You know, we have all the evidence of the modern era. So it's like my metacognition tells me, thinking about how I think. The top of my thinking tells me that I need to create a religious system, or you know, just an overall philosophical way of looking at reality that takes into account all available evidence, is consistent with all available evidence, uses the best of logic and mathematics and observation to assemble. And also, you need to be practical and prudent about things. I mean, I'm not trying to tell people not to go to church. I'm really not. I think I'm not going to go. Not for the short. The path I'm on, I'm not able to even say things that are true or false ritualistically. But I did violate that very recently at a funeral. I said amen at some point. The Baptist preacher was going on and on, saying a whole bunch of stuff that's just completely false. But that's fine, because it's like, I understand why. He's really either brainwashed himself thoroughly into it, or he just knows this is how I keep my job. And I'm really not sure which it is. It's, in my opinion, might be just a coin flip either way. You know, and the goodness that comes from putting a certain constraint on your behavior. So I'm walking by somebody, so I gotta be careful what I say. How you doing, man? And yeah, I guess I'll put an end to it there. Love y'all. Be good.